Okay, good afternoon. It's been quite some time since I made a post specifically on some of the new frontier models that are entering the marketplace. So I know I'm a little behind other YouTubers in this respect. I wanted to cover OpenAI's O1 system or O1 system card, but essentially showing you the ways that you can leverage chain of thought reasoning, these more thought reasoning specific models for your intended purpose. But I wanted to break down roughly what is O1. It's a new model released by OpenAI as of September, so we're a little couple months behind from the newest information as far as that's concerned. But I wanted to show specifically what is provided by the model card. You want to think about any model cards that are provided by the frontier model maker in this perspective, OpenAI. This is going to give you a very detailed analysis on what went into the specific model itself as far as data and training, observations, some of the safety challenges. The chain of thought is one of the really differentiators of how this model works to understand the reasoning. So you provided some context, it thinks through what you're specifically asking, it identifies the subtask, and I'll show you specifically what that looks like. Now, this also goes a little bit further into what type of red teaming does occur as far as jailbreaks, real world attack planning, and essentially scenarios that were assessed for this specific model itself. Now, I want to go into some of the areas that are shown from a pricing perspective, right? If you're trying to consider this in the future. So, from the pricing page here, OpenAI's O1 preview, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than your traditional GPT-4o. This likely is because of the complex reasoning. It likely has some form of more computational power that it provides to give you that reasoning. So there's still a couple options you do have. So $15 essentially for 1 million input tokens, which is quite a lot, mind you, but this could get fairly pricey if you bake a product on top of that, or if you're going to use that for some type of agent workflow. So what I'd suggest, if you're going to plan on using this, you could also consider the O1 Mini. You can see the different price tiers. If you can see, it's about 5 times less expensive than its larger parent, if you will, the O1 itself. So now that I got some pricing stuff out the door, I just wanted to at least cover that because none of these are really free in that regard. I wanted to show you a couple items. First, the visual diagram of how this system works. So essentially we have our input question up here. Is the input ambiguous? Essentially looking for clarification. Does it need clarification, right? Then it can prompt that end user. If not, and it understands the context, right? If you give it enough context, at least from my testing of it, it's going to look for these specific solutions. It's going to go through these iterations, if you will, to provide you a good response. Now, when we think about how this is thinking from a human-like behavior, right? What is the problem? Identifying the subtask. Okay, so if I ask you to provide me a financial analysis, okay, on what specifically? So the way I try to leverage this, and I'll show the examples that can help you out. If you have a high-level goal, generate me specific SEO-friendly content on whatever the topic is. And if you provide that context a little bit further, more of like text to that specific task itself, I've seen much better responses from these models specifically. And I'll get into some tools that are basically free at this point to kind of leverage. So I'll move over here to the chat playground. And there's a tool that you can work with here that essentially generates a system instruction. So this is essentially if you're using an assistant. Let's say I wanted an assistant for a specific scenario. So this is what it's providing, but I could say, create SEO friendly post on security for AI, specifically the defensive measures that are used. This is for content of a technical blog. So I can use that specific prompt or description, and I can go to generate, and then this will print out what you saw as system instructions. So you can see here, just from that small line of code or line of text, if you will, this is thought out. Okay, here's the blog structure. Introduction to AI security, defensive techniques, examples of this adverse. So essentially giving it examples of what would be included from that. But that's pretty robust, just giving you, not a lot of information, and it draws out a lot of that for you. So if you're not really good at creating these long-winded system prompts, and this is a tool you want to use, this is in beta. But the reason I say that is because you want to provide the O1 model quite a lot of context. for what you're asking, okay? So in the specific scenario, I've already populated the chat. I'm just going to break this down to you, and I'll zoom in a little bit so it makes it easier. What can I help you with? So I'll say you're a senior financial advisor as the persona that we're trying to mimic, that expertise, if you will, that has previously advised hedge funds, and a client reached out to you to evaluate his portfolio of ETFs. These are exchange trade funds. Think of this as groupings of entire indexes in a fund. So you're not buying a individual stock like Microsoft or Meta. You're buying a whole group of those funds. It could be all tech. It could be a number of those stocks. So you're looking at an allocation split of 75% of US-based stocks, 25% Europe, Asia, or beyond that. It doesn't have to, we can specify this as international. And you will say, okay, these are the following tickers that you're evaluating, right, from that perspective. Provide an analysis of the current holdings from a perspective of financial exposure, right, to this specific 75-25, the tax implications over a 20-year time span. Provide a summary of the holdings for someone in their early 20s that plans to work until 65. What is the exact allotment this specific client should encounter for hypothetical maximization of a Roth IRA, such as a year invested. So now I'm going to send this prompt. And the reason I added a little bit more context, you're going to see here, it's going to send it as thinking, focusing on Roth IRA investments. So it's extracting those subtasks, okay? Charting the portfolio's breadth. So it's going through that, evaluating tax efficiency, weighing the risk tolerance and allocations, mapping out the Roth IRA strategy. Now we can see this from the terminal perspective, right? There's a lot going on in the background, but this is going to take some time. It's going to craft the analysis. It's going to go through those steps, and then it's going to provide us, so you can see here what's going on in real time. I'm mapping out the client's investment strategy. So it's taking what we put, it's drafting a plan essentially, and it'll tell you thought for 34 seconds, and then portfolio analysis and recommendations. As a senior financial advisor, I reviewed your current portfolio and future investments. So your current holdings, Vanguard Total Stock Market Index, broad U.S. equity market. So this essentially covers broad, like the entire equity market across all market capitalizations, broad strokes, if you will. Dividend equity, so this will provide a dividend based on that ETF fund specifically. This can generate dividend income, bottom line from that perspective. What is the role of it? And then when we think about real estate, obviously real estate can be purchased through individual properties, or you can do grouping of properties, sort of like a stock, if you will, and that's real estate, ETF funds, holdings of typically commercial buildings, things of that nature. And they do produce income through dividends as well. So the bond market as well, this will show you, okay, international investment grade bonds hedged against currency fluctuations. So if currency goes up in another country, it's hedged against that as well. And then it gives us a breakdown, a small cap. So this will say equity versus fixed income is heavily weighted towards equities, approximately 95%, with a small allocation to international bonds, right? So domestic versus predominantly US focused, 75-25%, lacking international equity exposure. So if I wanted to diversify further, saying based on your current holdings, I would need more international equity exposure. So maybe I want to consider something that covers other areas of the international markets as well. That's an ETF, right? Good diversification within US equities across large cap, small cap. So we have this concept of large cap. Think of your large companies, the Magnificent Seven, and then you have your medium cap, which are growing pretty large in general, and then you have your small cap. So I have large and small, and then I have dividend paying stocks and real estate. So this shows that your risk profile and how we categorize that is growth oriented, suitable for long-term horizon, but could benefit from additional diversification. So now this goes through the hypothetical, the tax implications, okay? And this is important if you're in the United States. So Roth IRAs are essentially a way that you can pay your taxes upfront to those investments. Now, the way that works is essentially you put in your taxed paid money, if you will, and you're paying the taxes upfront initially. So then on the long span of when you do need the money in retirement, when you pull out those contributions and those gains, you're not necessarily paying an upfront cost of those taxes in the long haul, okay? Now, I'm not a financial analyst, so please validate what I'm saying a little bit further. And that's why I've specified the Roth IRA benefits. So this will tell you specifically for 2023, the maximum annual contribution, $6,500 under age 50, assuming future increases to $7,000. So I was off by $500. So this will tell you specifically what are the efficient investing, right? So we have both of our funds generate a regular taxable income if held in taxable account, and we also have capital gains. Funds like may have a high turnover, leaving in capital gains distribution, which are not taxable within a Roth IRA. So it's saying that our specific holdings and our dividend and our real estate funds are going to be regular taxable income if held in a taxable account. Since we're going to put these in a Roth IRA, this will shelter this from taxes from our traditional 401k from that perspective. But this also talks about a specific small cap fund may have a higher turnover. That's essentially, it might change the holdings that are a part of this group of this family of indexes, if you will. So maybe they have their asset allocation diminish, increase, whatever the case may be, to specific companies, or sell those companies, have a turnover rate from that perspective. So this will tell you then at a large horizon recommendations for a 20-something investor. So think of this as 20 years old from that perspective. This will tell you increase international equity exposure. It gives you the rationale and action. Adjust the fixed income. Consider reducing or eliminate in favor of equities. Optimize asset allocation. Simplify portfolio structure. So this will tell you here, and it even breaks it down for you. That's even pretty incredible. It looks like it stopped thinking right there. So maybe I'll have to reprompt that. But you can see here. So it says for the total stock market, 50%, 3,500 of 7,000, assuming you contributed that, even though it's 65. For that specific stock, 25%, 70/50 for VTAX, and the small cap, and a couple others are highlighted here. Let me see if I stop it. Okay. Looks like it's preparing. Okay. So I think I might have interrupted it. But if you can see, this goes through quite a lot, and the responses are very, very personalized to your specific need. I look at this, I use large language models every day, but what are some of the key capabilities of getting the most out of this? I think for long form type of task that requires some very detailed analysis, specifically finance when I think of that, or it could be you have a specific objective and you're trying to think of the best approach. This is the type of model you'll want to use. Now notice you can always switch between the preview and the mini, and we can kind of see those differences too. Like if I go to mini and see what it generates from there as well. So you can see the rate of the response is much more quick in the response rate. Now you can see here, this will throw a disclaimer out, but similar. It might not be as detailed as the last one. Okay, so this will tell you that breakdown, and this just has it by the dollar sign, which wouldn't be hard for you to figure that one out as well. Rebalance your Roth IRA annually, so some pretty good judgment here. And then, okay, so this breaks down the allocation before the actual cost itself, but that's how it would break down from assuming $7,000. So that is a small use case. I didn't want to make the video too long from that perspective. These many ways to think about using O1 specifically. The O1 Mini I've used a lot more than the larger O1 Preview. But when you think about all the capabilities that you're trying to get out of a traditional chat completions, or what we call chat completions like GPT-4o, these responses become much more meaningful with the amount of context they can think in. And the reason I say that is because you'll find some limitations, and that's really the next segue when I make another video on using agents, or what we call assist. What we use primarily from the OpenAI perspective is the assistants API. And I'll go into what assistants are in a breakdown a little bit more in depth than this specific video. But this is to get you started on what are some of the key capabilities. Hopefully you use this tool to generate some better system prompts, but you could use this as well and tailor this to what you're going to put into the large language model, and then have it give you a more conclusive output. And then you can see here, this will tell you notes, things of that nature. You can use this also to build your own agents as the template, if you will, that you want to use for your agents. And then obviously iterate and take out what you don't like, put in what you do like. The more specific you are and the parameters you give it, to me, those are some of the best responses I've gotten out of these specific advanced large language models. So hopefully this video gives you something more practical. Now, again, I know a lot of people want to use coding and other stuff. You can definitely use it for that. I just wanted to give something that obviously everyone in the US and abroad has to retire at some point in time, might as well run some type of calculations. What exactly does that look like? And get some advice, obviously from a financial perspective. But if you want to run some stuff on your own, definitely do your research. Okay, well, hopefully you like this video, and let me know if there's any other concepts you'd like me to cover in the comments. Be happy to cover them further.